Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. I've been getting the sense that you're all pretty curious about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. His name comes up every now and then, but I get the feeling most of you haven't really had a chance to explore his story.
Yeah,
Well, get ready, because this is not your typical history lesson. This is a story of battling prejudice and fighting for equality.
it is.
And it's all about the power of using knowledge to create change.
What's really fascinating is that Ambedkar's journey began in a place that most people can't even imagine. Born in 1891,
Wow.
he was born into a world that was really rigidly divided by the caste system. And to be more specific, he was born into the Mehar caste,
Okay.
which was considered untouchable.
It's hard to really grasp what that word even means.
Right.
To be untouchable, to be told you're outside the boundaries of human dignity.
Exactly.
And this wasn't just some abstract concept for Ambedkar.
Right.
This was his lived reality. This was his everyday experience.
Yeah, the caste system, it wasn't just a social hierarchy. It was a very complex web of religious beliefs, social norms, and even legal restrictions. All of that dictated every single aspect of a person's life.
Wow.
And for Dalits like Ambedkar, this meant facing segregation, being denied access to even basic resources, and just constant humiliation.
You know what really gets me is the contrast we see within his own family. So his father served in the British Army, the very institution that upheld the laws that enforced this system.
Right.
What kind of an impact did that have on a young Ambedkar?
Oh, it's incredible to think about, on the one hand, your father represents authority, service, respect. But then on the other hand, the system that he serves is actively dehumanizing you and your entire community.
Right.
That contradiction really fueled Ambedkar's early understanding of injustice, but it also gave him this belief in the potential for change. Through engaging with systems of power.
Okay, so instead of being crushed by all of this, Ambedkar turns to education. He attends Elphinstone College in Bombay, which is present-day Mumbai. And even that step was pretty unusual for someone of his background back then, wasn't it?
Absolutely. Higher education was largely inaccessible to Dalits at that time. It was almost unheard of for someone like Ambedkar to pursue academics.
Right.
And this really shows his incredible drive to break free from the limitations imposed by the caste system. He wasn't content with just accepting the very, very limitations that were dictated by his birth.
And his thirst for knowledge didn't stop there.
No, it didn't.
He goes on to earn degrees from Columbia University and the London School of Economics.
I know, it's amazing.
Talk about breaking barriers. Was he one of the first Indians to achieve this level of education abroad?
He was a true pioneer in that sense. His pursuit of higher education abroad really set him apart. And it exposed him to these new ideas, different ways of thinking about society and governance. And it really equipped him with the intellectual tools that he would later use to challenge the very foundation of the system that he was born into.
Okay, so he comes back to India, armed with all this knowledge, but he's still treated as an untouchable.
Unfortunately, yes.
It's a tragic example of just how deeply entrenched prejudice can be.
It's a very harsh reality check. Ambedkar's experience really highlights the limitations of individual achievement. When you're facing this kind of systemic discrimination,
Right.
degrees and accolades, unfortunately, could not erase the stigma of his caste. And this realization was a pivotal moment in his journey. It pushed him to move beyond just focusing on personal advancement and dedicate himself to the larger cause of the liberation of his entire community.
And this is where we see his activism taking shape.
Exactly.
It's not enough for him to just educate himself. He wants to empower others. And this leads to a really pivotal moment in 1927, the Mahat Satyagraha.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about the significance of this event?
So the Mahat Satyagraha was basically a public demonstration that directly challenged the denial of basic human rights to Dalits.
Wow.
It was a movement to assert their right to access public water sources, something that was routinely denied to them based solely on their caste.
So it wasn't just a protest, it was a direct confrontation with the everyday realities of the caste system.
Exactly.
Imagine being denied something as essential as water,
I know.
just because of your birth.
It's hard to fathom.
It's unbelievable.
The audacity of this movement was really significant. It forced society to confront the inhumanity of the caste system head-on.
Right.
This wasn't about abstract concepts of equality anymore. This was about the fundamental right to exist with dignity.
And this bold approach is even more apparent in another act.
Yeah.
He publicly burns copies of the Manusmriti.
Yes.
And this isn't just any text. This was a Hindu legal text that many saw as justifying the caste hierarchy.
It was a very powerful, symbolic act of defiance, a rejection of the ideology that legitimized caste-based oppression.
Wow.
By doing so, he was challenging the core of a belief system that had been in place for centuries.
It's like he's saying we won't be defined by your rules anymore.
Exactly.
This act resonates with so many protests that we see even today. People challenging social norms,
Yeah.
pushing for change.
Right.
And Ambedkar was doing this back in the 1920s.
It really speaks to his vision and his understanding of the power of symbolic action. He knew that to dismantle the caste system, it wasn't enough to just have legal reforms. You needed a fundamental shift in societal attitudes and beliefs.
Right.
And he challenged those very narratives that justified discrimination.
So we see this incredible transformation from scholar to activist,
Yeah.
driven by a deep understanding of both the power of knowledge and the need for direct action. And it's clear this is just the beginning of his story. Stay with us, because in Part 2, we'll explore how Ambedkar's fight for equality took him to the very heart of shaping the future of India.
It's going to be fascinating.
You won't want to miss it.
Okay, so imagine this India 1947, newly independent, and they're faced with this massive task of creating a constitution for this huge, diverse nation.
Right.
And who do they turn to for this monumental task? Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the man who was once deemed untouchable.
Oh, that's incredible. It's almost like poetic justice.
It is.
The very system that tried to exclude him now needs his intellect and his vision to help build its foundation.
Exactly. It really speaks to his expertise and the changing tide in India. He was appointed chairman of the drafting committee, and this role allowed him to really shape the legal framework of the newly independent nation.
So what were some of the key elements that Ambedkar fought to include in the Indian Constitution?
He was completely unwavering in his commitment to enshrine the fundamental rights of all citizens, regardless of caste, religion, or gender.
Okay.
Equality, liberty, fraternity. And these weren't just lofty ideals for him. They were the bedrock of a just society.
Which, considering India's history, was a pretty radical departure from the existing social order.
Oh, absolutely. Ambedkar was so aware of the deep inequalities that plagued Indian society. He knew that simply outlawing discrimination wasn't enough. The Constitution needed to actively promote and protect the rights of all citizens.
So he wasn't just codifying existing norms. He was really pushing for a fundamental shift in how India viewed its people and its future.
Exactly. One of his most powerful quotes really captures this vision. He said, "I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved."
Wow.
He understood that true progress could not occur if half the population was denied equal rights and opportunities.
It highlights that he wasn't just focused on one group or one issue. He saw the interconnectedness of different forms of oppression. And he really sought to create a system that embraced equality for all.
Yes, and his commitment to education also played a key role in shaping his vision for the Constitution. He knew that education was essential to empowering marginalized communities,
Right.
enabling them to break free from the cycle of poverty and discrimination.
So it wasn't just about legal rights. It was about creating the conditions for social and economic mobility. But did he face any opposition to these really progressive ideas during the drafting process?
Of course, change rarely comes easily. Conservative leaders, those clinging to traditional hierarchies, pushed back against his vision. They resisted his efforts to dismantle the caste system and promote greater equality.
I could imagine that would have been incredibly frustrating for him, to face resistance from those who couldn't or wouldn't see the need for such fundamental change.
Oh, it was a constant battle. But Ambedkar was not one to back down. He believed in dialogue and debate, and ultimately in the Constitution itself, as a tool to bring about lasting change.
And on January 26, 1950, despite all the hurdles, the Indian Constitution came into effect. A truly historic moment,
It was.
marking a new chapter in India's journey.
It was a testament to his perseverance and his unwavering belief in the power of law to shape a more just and equitable society.
But even with these legal reforms in place, he knew that deeper societal transformation was needed.
Right? It's like laying the foundation for a building. You need that strong base, but then comes the actual work of constructing the rest of the structure.
Exactly.
And this is where Ambedkar's journey takes another fascinating turn. He realized that simply outlawing discrimination wasn't enough to eradicate those centuries-old prejudices that were embedded in society.
Right.
He sought a more profound personal shift for himself and his followers.
This is where his conversion to Buddhism comes in.
Yes.
In 1956, he and hundreds of thousands of his followers embraced Buddhism. What led him to this decision?
It was a deliberate rejection of the caste system inherent in Hinduism. He saw Buddhism as a path to liberation, a philosophy that emphasized equality, compassion, and personal responsibility.
So it was more than just a religious conversion. It was a statement of his commitment to social justice and a rejection of the oppressive structures of his birth.
Exactly. And his choice of words when he was explaining this conversion is very revealing. He said, "I like the religion that teaches liberty, equality, and fraternity." These values resonate far beyond the boundaries of any specific religion. They're the foundation of a just and equitable society.
And this wasn't a decision he made in isolation, was it? He had a massive following who joined him on this journey.
Hundreds of thousands of Dalits converted alongside Ambedkar, signaling this collective desire to break free from the shackles of the caste system and embrace a philosophy that offered dignity and equality.
We've seen him rise from a childhood marked by discrimination to shaping the legal framework of a nation, and then ultimately leading a spiritual and social movement. It's an incredible story of resilience and a testament to the power of one person to drive change.
It really is.
But I feel like there's still more to explore.
Yeah, there is. Ambedkar's story doesn't end here. His legacy continues to inspire, and his ideas resonate even today. So stay with us as we delve into the lasting impact of his work in Part 3.
You know, it's pretty incredible to think that just weeks after this monumental conversion, Ambedkar passed away.
Yeah,
It's kind of a bittersweet ending to a life filled with so much, struggle and triumphs.
it really is. It's almost like he poured all of his energy into shaping a better future, knowing that his time was limited.
Right.
But even though he was gone, his legacy continued.
And it wasn't just a legacy that was confined to India, right?
No, not at all.
His ideas about social justice and equality and the power of education, those have a global reach.
You know, when you think about the movements for equality and social justice that are happening all over the world, so many of them can trace their roots back to the principles that Ambedkar championed.
Right?
You know, his fight against the caste system was a specific battle, but the underlying principles, they really resonate with any struggle against oppression and discrimination.
So he wasn't just a Dalit leader or even just an Indian leader. He was a global champion for human rights and social transformation.
Exactly. He transcended boundaries. You know, his emphasis on constitutional morality and using law as a tool for social change, that's inspired activists and reformers way beyond India's borders.
And it's not just an abstract legacy either.
Right.
There are real tangible signs of his impact, even today.
Absolutely. In 1990, the Indian government awarded Ambedkar the Bharat Ratna,
Wow.
which is their highest civilian honor. It was really a long overdue recognition of his contribution to the nation.
It's like a collective thank you from India.
Yes, acknowledging his impact on the very fabric of Indian society.
And his influence goes beyond official recognition, too.
Of course.
His writings and speeches continue to be studied and debated. They offer incredible insights into the complexities of social justice and the struggle for equality.
They really do.
Which brings us back to something we said at the very beginning of this deep dive. Ambedkar's life shows us that one person really can make a difference.
It's true.
And it's a call to action for all of us.
Right.
Ambedkar used education as his weapon. He knew how powerful knowledge could be, to dismantle oppressive systems and to empower people. So in a world that's overflowing with information, the question for us is, how are we using knowledge to make a positive impact?
It's a challenge for all of us to look at the injustices in the world and think about what we can do. How can we use our knowledge, our skills, even our voices to create a more just and equitable world?
Ambedkar's legacy is a testament to the power of perseverance, having the courage to challenge the way things are, and that unwavering belief in the possibility of change.
Absolutely.
This deep dive has just scratched the surface of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's amazing life and his legacy. But we hope it sparked your curiosity and that you'll keep exploring his work and his ideas and the movements that he inspired. There's so much to learn, and in that learning, maybe we can all find a way to contribute to building a world that reflects those values of equality and justice that Ambedkar fought for his whole life.
Thank you for joining us.